Alright, new Never You BGM back again for another video. Today we are talking about the cards that got revealed last week. Instead of actually reading every card, I figured since you're going to be looking at the screen anyway, the best thing for you to do is read the card, and I'll just give you my opinion on said card. First, we're going to start with Grahatia. When it enters the field, you can remove another one of him, and you can go on from there. So pretty much what this card does is if you have two, or if your opponent has two forwards, you can dull them and deal 4k to them a piece. If you have another Grahatia in the break zone, you can remove it. For 5 cost and him being 9k, one of the benefits is that he's a scion of the 7th dawn. So if you are running the Ishtola that does damage based off the scions, that's another scion card on field to facilitate that ability. Outside of that, he costs a little more than the other Grahatia, and he is one of 2 Grahatias. So at the current go ahead with the cards that we know that are already revealed, plus the cards we already have in the card pool, this one would be more of a one-of option just to like dull 1 or 2 cards your opponent controls, 2 forward. If you have game on board, you could just slam this bad boy down. If the other one's already been dealt with, play this one, remove one of the other ones in break, dull 2 forwards your opponent controls, and proceed to go for game. And if you're running a Hien build, I mean, he gets haste. So I mean, there's options for it. I don't know how many options because all the cards haven't been revealed yet, but it's playable. Let's say that. Next is the Palom, which is the twin brother of the 2. This one is a 2 cost fire, 5k. I see the potential in this card. I really do. Now, I don't know if my plan would work with this, but let's say you're playing this one and you have any form of Porum out on the field. So Porum's obviously water. You can play this for free, and you can either give this 2 EXP counters, or you can give Porum 2 EXP counters, or you can give another forward that you control EXP counters. Either way, whichever forward that you decide to give these counters to, they're gonna get 2k. And if you give it to another Porum, she's also gonna get 2k, and she's also gonna have more options to do negate effects, make something 1,000, and pretty much it's back and forth with how you want to do that. Now, with this thing being a 2 cost, obviously it's susceptible to cloud, but I mean, most things are. And there's the Amaterasu, but I don't really see many people Amaterasuing this unless it's gonna be a bigger problem than it obviously is. I see what they're going for with this. This card's one of those cards that's obviously gonna get better with time because they're probably not done making Paloms and Porums. So if there's ever comes a time where there's a stronger Porum that operates off of EXP counters, then obviously this will come into play. But until then, I mean, if you just want to have an extra card you can play for free, you can run this in your water deck, and I mean, really kind of push the board. Or if you need another blocker, I mean, you have a free blocker essentially if Porum's on the field. Anyway, same thing for Porum that I said for Palom, pretty much interchangeable. It's essentially the same card, except Porum reduces the damage instead of gives 2k buff. If you're going against a deck that's really just overly powerful, that's just stacking damage on things like Ferris, whatever Ferris hits with these EXP counters, she's essentially doing 1k, and if she's doing the 1k to everybody, then it's 0. So this is a good card to stop damage or reduce damage. And like I said about Palom, it's all susceptible to what they plan on doing as far as Final Fantasy IV cards, especially these 2 in particular. Asura, it is another 1 cost wind summon. Now this one can activate all the forwards you control. They also gain this forward cannot be returned to the owner's hand by opponent summons or abilities, and the power of that forward cannot be decreased by your opponent summons or abilities. So that means field abilities, action abilities, special abilities, whatever. I just protected from a slew of things. There is a card coming up that we're gonna go over that this would work well against, but I mean, it's only for a specific amount of time, and you also have to play this. And since you can't really stack, anyway, I'm getting too far ahead of myself. This is good, and it's also going to be good for a few reasons, because there's always going to be cards that want to return things. There's always going to be cards that want to decrease power, etc. This is good against Leviathan. This is good against a few other things. It's not a card that's going to be ran in everything, because it's very dependent on what's really being played at the current moment, but I could see it being used as one of those cards that comes in and out of rotation based off of what the majority of the player base is playing. Vincent. So a lot of flack on this card because he's a 7 cost and he takes 6 warp turns. I mean, if you're playing Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy 7's a fan favorite game, so there's obviously gonna be more Final Fantasy 7 cards. And with that, there's also the opportunity for things to be cheaper or things to be free. And with him blowing up a forward, and if he comes in due to warp, blowing up a backup, that could be tremendously helpful depending on how long the game's been going on. I mean, it's a 9K, so it's not getting stopped by Amaterasu. Even if they do Amaterasu it's still on the field. You got a 9K blocker. Earth is really good with kind of keeping its strength against most things. So it does kind of suck that, you know, Vincent kind of gets the short end of the stick on a lot of his cards, but Vincent is also chaos, not the actual chaos, but the chaos materia. So there's always opportunities for that to come into play. So I feel like this card is going to be one of those things where he feeds off of that, and other Final Fantasy cards, especially the Dirge of Cerberus ones that potentially are coming out in this set and maybe future sets down the road, will probably benefit off of this. And if you're playing Avalanche, I mean, if you got 2 to 3 backups and Vincent's warped, that's like 2 to 3 forwards, 3 warp counters. Your turn, that counts as 4. If you can just make it to your next turn, play another Final Fantasy 7 forward, he comes out, he gets rid of a threat, he gets rid of a backup, and you kind of potentially can control the board. But I can see with him being 7 and the warp 6 how that could be a hindrance to a lot of people, but nevertheless, I still think it's a good card, and the art pretty fantastic as well. Beatrix is pretty good. I like the fact that she can't be clouded, and I also like the fact that when she attacks, if you control 3 or more forwards that are knights, break a forward your opponent controls. Well, just break any forward. So you can even break one of your forwards if you need to for whatever reason. It's a limit break, so it's always going to be potentially able to be used, and it won't clash with the other Beatrix as much because this is something you don't have to worry about drawing. This is more of something that you can play when you need it. I'm not very familiar when it comes to knights. I don't think they really have anything that gives them haste off of just being played or being around other knights, but that's a potential that they could get that down the road, and that makes this a lot more powerful because Corella, you play her, she could potentially get 2 knights off her ability. You play Beatrix, if Beatrix gets haste, she attacks, she breaks a forward your opponent controls, and depending on what forward you get off of Corella, they could potentially break something. So it's a lot of things that can happen, and I think people get caught up in the newness of a card, and instead of thinking about all the potential things that can happen, they think about the present. And with card games, you can't really think about the present unless there isn't anything else to be announced in the current moment, and we clearly have like 70 to 80% of the set that hadn't been revealed yet. So I mean, just be patient, give it time. Quina. Okay, so this is monster support. The fact that when a monster enters the field on anybody's side, draw a card, and then you can just pitch a copy of Quina, play 1 water, and then until the end of the turn, you choose a forward. It loses 3k power for each monster either player controls. So this card punishes your opponent for using monsters and gives you an extra card. And it's also in water, which is a deck that's notoriously known for drawing cards and keeping resources on the field. So this card is a very welcome addition, especially the fact that you can play Kitna, Cleon, Blue Worm, Sahagin Chief. There's just so many good monsters monsters in water. And even if you don't play monsters, if you know that there's a monster heavy deck at your locals or in tournament scene, you could always use this as kind of a tech card to keep you drawing cards. And if they want to deal with it, they kind of either have to Amaterasu the effect or hope that they can break it, or hope that you attack and they can break it. So it's one of those things that even if it's not being effectively used, it still has 8k and it still can swing for a pretty hefty price. So this card being a common, I think does a lot that really shouldn't be ignored just because it's a common, because there will be a time where monsters run the game, and when they do, this card will be one of those cards that comes in and can potentially save the day. But you also have to keep in mind that you have to either keep this card somewhere in your collection or be aware that it exists. Queen. Now, I do remember talking about Jack putting things into the break zone. And I do remember saying that if Queen does something relatively close to helping that facilitate that ability, then those two would probably be a good card or a good combination of cards. I don't really like her second ability because it's just given 2k, and if the damage is dealt, make it 0. And it helps, but to remove 3 cards in your break zone from that is just it's kind of lackluster. But the art is so good, you would think that it would do something a lot more than that. But then again, we don't know if there's any more class 0 cadets or type 0 cards that are going to benefit off of this. And that also means I have to kind of bear my judgment because I don't know what's coming on down the line. So with that being said, I like her, but I wish it did more. It obviously doesn't, but in the future, this could be something really good. Like if the game goes to where we can get things that are removed from the game back, this could essentially help you set up for plays down the road. And with it being a hero, I feel like that's where the game's eventually gonna head at some point, maybe if that's even 2 to 3 years down the road. Either way, I think she's useful, just I don't see the relevance at the moment. Sarah. Okay, so everybody that knows me, knows the channel, knows Final Fantasy, knows that my thing is lightning. Sarah is obviously Lightning's sister. She's finally in the lightning category, and this effect is pretty ridiculous, especially if you're playing 13. If you have 3 13 forwards, your opponent's forwards lose 5k. So that means most nights, as soon as they hit the field, they're just going to the break zone because it's a field ability, it doesn't activate. And then her special is you just pitch a copy of yourself, and your opponent cannot increase the power of their forwards by any means. No summons, no abilities. She's a 4 cost, so that means none of her stuff can be Amaterasu'd. She can be Kugelaned or Kukulland, or however you want to pronounce that blue thing. She is essentially keeping it to where even the strongest forwards your opponent plays, like Warrior of Light, the 10k one, he's only 5k, staring the barrel of any of your Final Fantasy 13 characters. And at the minimum, the 13 is 5k. So if you're playing a mirror match of 13, you play Sarah, 2 other 13 forwards. They can't play Saz, they can't play Fang, they can't do really too much of anything. So I think this card's really good, and that art is fantastic, and I'm hoping to get 3 play sets. Tataru, I believe I'm saying that correctly. It's another Scion, first of its kind. It's a backup, so that counts for, I believe, Ishtola, and I believe it counts for the actual light card, the Scions of the Seventh Dawn. Getting pretty close to having an easy 10 auto win, but it's nothing really special. Stole it, draw 1 card. You can only use it if there's 4 Scions on the field. Now, when I say it's nothing special, I don't mean the effect's not good. You can obviously have this as your 4th or 5th, maybe even your 3rd backup. And this combined with Leo, this is potentially 2 cards a turn. So you're getting 4 cards that turn. And this also helps with playing Titus. This also helps with any other future limit break water cards that you're going to play. This also helps with Luna Freya, because if you know that you have an EX burst, that's your 6th card. You can draw with Tataru, play Luna Freya, access the EX burst. It just helps a lot more than it hinders, and it's never a bad idea to have a card that can draw you a card for essentially free. So I mean, if you play it, you have 4 Scions on the field, well 3 more because she is 1. Next turn you get a free draw, and if you want to use the card you drew for CP, then you can. So I mean, it's really good option, really good card, and it's not like Water needed any more draw support, but hey, they got it. Brionic. This is a type 0 forward. Pretty hefty one. You remove 2 Earth cards in a break zone from the game, and then until the end of the turn, he gets another 2K and Brave. Obviously, you can only use this on your turn, and it's a crystal card, so you pay a crystal, duel it, and then choose a forward, deal it 9K. Now, if you're playing a crystal deck, this is a little crazy because you can remove 2 Earth cards. It gets him Brave and 2K, so he's staring. He's an 11,000 card. He swings, he has Brave, and then on swing you can pay a crystal and then deal a forward 9K. So you can essentially do the Warrior of Light thing, almost double the damage. That deals with just about every forward in the game. Deal it 9K, attacks going through, and 9 times out of 10, unless it's their last point of damage, nobody's blocking this. Nobody, unless they know that they have some kind of plan to get rid of something, because they're going to lose essentially 2 forwards at that point. Now, he does cost 5. That is a lot, but I mean, drastic times calls for drastic measures. So it's potentially a card that is I can see this being one of those cards that gets randomly played. Nobody's expecting it. People are just stacking up crystals. Then they come in with this bad boy, just start nuking the field every turn with an attack. He's essentially a Galoof that doesn't have to worry about anything interacting with his ability, because they're all action abilities. And no, they're all action abilities. So I like this card, and I think it'll be pretty nice as a foil. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this one goes. Alphino, so this card is ridiculously good. It is beyond anything that I feel like a common should be. And I'm not one of those people that cares about the rarity of a card determining it being good or not. But put him in the break, play Alizé from your break, 4 or less on the field duel, and that's it. You can only use that ability on your turn. But let's say break Alphino, or you don't break him, you just put him in the break zone. Play Alizé, 4-drop Lightning. Get Grahatia if you want, and then you can either get another Alphino to make Alizé's ability go off to duel a forward, and then make them send a duel forward to the break. You can get a Stola, that's 12,000 damage shooting at a forward. I mean, there's so many things. And with that, I mean, like we discussed earlier, you just never know what other Scions they're gonna make. So the more Scions they make that are cost 3 or less, Alizé can grab, just makes not only Alphino much better, but Alizé much better. So Journey, I think that's how you say that. Backup. You can choose one forward that costs 3 or less. It gains 1,000. If this forward is dealt damage by an ability, the damage becomes 0. So this is a good response to really anything that's going to deal damage to your forward, and especially if the forward has been blocking the whole time and it needs like another 1,000 to stay alive for the last block, or they try to ping it with Warrior Light or Fire Deck or really anything. It's good, but it's also one of those things that's kind of situational, and situational cards aren't bad. And I don't feel like just because a card's not being used that it's bad. I just feel like it's just not the time for that card to be used. Because if you say a card's bad just because it's, I guess people say unusable, you limit the card for what it really is. Because if you lose to it, that means you lost to a bad card, and it also means you're a bad player, because good players theoretically shouldn't lose to bad cards. So I don't think this card or any card's bad, but I just think this card is very, very niche and has its place in certain situations. And if anything, you can play as a 2-cost drop backup and just get yourself CP. Luso. Now this one being a 5-drop and a Keyblade on his back, That's a lot for a little. You can choose a character, cost 2 in your break zone, play it, and then you can put him in the break, choose a monster, break it. I mean, I guess theoretically, this gets any character, so monsters, forwards, backups. This could play Zidane of wind or wind fire, and then it can break a monster, which is very rare. There's not very many things that do that, but it's a lot. 5 for a backup is a lot. Usually when you see a backup cost 5, you expect for it to do Tyro or Shantoto things, and obviously this does not. But depending on what all 2s come out in the future, or like I said, Zidane, this could be a problem card, because Wind doesn't have a problem playing cards, and it definitely doesn't have a problem reactivating its backups. And good thing this doesn't say cast that card, because if it did, this card would be a lot more, I wouldn't say toxic, but it would definitely be crazy. The last card for today is Alizé. When she hits the field, choose a character without it. I don't even know what that's called, but the multiplay card or symbol. You can search for a character with the same name added to your hand. So with this, if you have a card that runs a special ability, you just slam her down, get that card, have it in your hand, and then whenever you need that special ability to go off, you can do it. So Irvine, Shinryu, the new Chaos. There's just so many things that this card can benefit, and it also makes it to where anything in the future that has a special that's kind of like hard to get to, you just play her, she goes and gets it, and then that's that. I can see this card being used in a lot more decks than just Scions, just because it's essentially a searcher, and if they do Amaterasu it, you don't really lose anything. The only thing that, I mean, I guess they could miss dragging you, but there's not really much you can do to this. I mean, they'll know what's in your hand, unless there's like cards that are, I guess Remedy hurts this because it makes you discard on a search. I mean, it's not too many things that would like interfere with this card, is my point. So I think it's a really good card, and I think a lot of these cards are going to be played in a lot of innovative ways, and hopefully them being commons and rares doesn't negate the fact that, you know, they have good text and they can take a lot of things further than I think a lot of current cards could, and it never hurts to have more options. So with that being said, this has been last week's cards and a few of this week's, and hopefully we get some decent ones next week so we can talk about that. Other than that, I am New Never You. Thank you for listening to my opinions about these cards, and I will see you hopefully next week with another round of cards. Take it easy. Peace.